May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Witt, I move to approve the special meeting agenda for the Jeffco Schools Board of Education for February 18th, 2014 as presented.
Second.
I second it.
Roll call.
Just like discussion.
Discussion.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment that we add a 3 to 5 minute discussion item on the board agenda to discuss the letter we were just handed by Mr. Witt regarding a communication that the board president would like to send to all Jeffco employees. The letter has inaccuracies, and I also think it oversteps the role of board president. I'd like to add that as an agenda item for 3 to 5 minutes will be fine. Do you accept that friendly amendment?
Sure.
Okay.
The next agenda item was added at the beginning of this meeting. I proposed sending a letter from the president out to the district. Mr. Kemper has asked that we discuss either the content or the approach, and I'm more than happy to do that. Mr. Kemper, we don't have a motion on the table. We'll probably move after the discussion, but
Fair enough. A couple of pieces that I'd like to talk with the board about regarding this letter, which is dated today. There are 2 concerns that I have. One is that if we want to communicate what next steps are, I would recommend that communication is not done by the president of the board to Jeffco Schools employees, but instead is done by either the interim superintendent or the panel of 4 folks who are going to be part of the transition team to talk about next steps. One of the things that we know is important as a board is that there's one employee that we work with directly, and that's the superintendent. Again, in this case, either the interim superintendent, which is the direction I'm hopeful that we move in, or the 4 individuals who are on the proposed transition team. That's one piece. The second piece for me is that I think, as I read the letter, specifically, as you may know, Superintendent Cindy Stevenson recently announced she had accepted a job at the Colorado Association of School Executives as director of their Leadership Initiative. She subsequently approached the board about the possibility of an early departure, and the board is honoring her request. In addition to wishing Dr. Stevenson all the best in her new venture, we would like to express our deep gratitude for her long years of dedicated service to our children. I have a couple of issues with this. One, I think it was clear when this board met last time why Dr. Stevenson was stepping down. Her direct quote was, she couldn't lead, she couldn't manage. And if we're going to talk about why Dr. Stevenson is stepping down, I think that we should discuss that honestly with our employees and with our community. That's one piece. She simply couldn't manage because, as she pointed out, this board doesn't trust her. I think that if there are 2 issues. One, we need to correct the inaccuracies, and 2, this is a letter that should go out under the person who is spearheading the district, not the president of the board. I think it sets a bad precedent in terms of the board president or any member of this board endorsing a letter that clearly micromanages the work of the district.
Thank you, Ms. Kemper. Ms. Sullivan?
I believe, and I got the email you sent a couple hours before the meeting with this letter. The letter wasn't attached, so I deeply appreciate the printout. At any rate, I couldn't open it on my phone. It might have been here. But you mentioned that as part of GPO 5, the general that was part of your purview. I don't see that in there, so help me understand where in the policy we find that the board president can send out a letter to staff.
It is my belief that GPO 5 gives the board president the authority to communicate on behalf of the board.
It doesn't say that in here, does it?
Please read the last line.
The president may delegate to other members the responsibility of making statements to the media when appropriate.
Fair enough. If you don't feel like that it's authorized in GPO 5,
I don't feel it is. I agree with Ms. Dahlgren.
I got your point, and I'm happy to take that up. We'll review GPO 5, and we'll take that up at a subsequent meeting. I don't disagree that the language needs to be much clearer, and we need to define whether or not the board can communicate and whether or not the board president or the board secretary can communicate through district channels. I'm more than happy to clarify that. So So,
So,
one moment. So
My
now,
feeling would be that as a board president and as a board, we do not have the authority to communicate to staff based on. what-
my second concern is we have had a strong outcry from both the district personnel and from the public that we communicate more often and more clearly about where we're headed, what we're doing, and the decisions we're making. I believe that we need to be careful, to be thorough in our communications, and we need to become much more frequent in our communications, not only to the media, but in our communications to the district, to district personnel. And for that reason, this letter is something that I intend to start with, I'd like to start with, but in either event, we'll do a review of GPO 5, we'll decide exactly what the boundaries are, and it is my position that this board needs to become much more proactive and much more frequent in its communications with all of the stakeholders, not just the media.
I agree
One
with you.
more round.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. We do need to communicate more often, but we need to communicate accurately, and this letter is not accurate.
Yeah, I want to underscore what Mr. Wood was saying is that I too have been hearing some complaints about relative lack of communication from the new board to the constituents, from both the press and from constituents as well. So I think this is a good first step at establishing communication channels from the board to the community. As far as the inaccuracies or the alleged inaccuracies here, I see the paragraph in question here as 3 sentences. And maybe you could tell me what is not accurate. In sentence number 1, as you may know, Superintendent Cindy Stevenson recently announced she had accepted the job with the Colorado Association of School Executives as director of their leadership initiative. Is there anything inaccurate about that statement?
Words and context matter, Mr. Kirk. And what we heard from Dr. Stevenson is that that position was a position that would occur at the end of the transition, which the board originally agreed would be at the end of June. What's more, Dr. Stevenson was forced out of her position by this board. And she was forced out because she specifically stated she could not lead, she could not manage because this board didn't trust her. My belief is that this letter oversteps the authority of the board in communicating directly with employees. It is wrong to do. I think that if this board feels it's important to talk with our community, that's what our community engagement process is about, and our community engagement strategies. But we do not use district communications as a board to communicate with district employees. That's not the right step. I think there are other good community engagement strategies we can use. It oversteps its micromanaging.
Ms. Williams?
I don't see any inaccuracies. And I know that I never asked for Dr. Stevenson's resignation. So I think that is a complete untruth. I think that there are trust issues, maybe towards the 3 of us, newer board members. And so maybe it goes both ways. I think that if one person within the district is allowed to put up her press releases, the board should have a voice as well.
Mr. Kirk?
All right, well, one sentence here I think we can all agree on is that in addition to wishing Dr. Stevenson all the best in her new venture, we would like to express our deep gratitude for her long years of dedicated service to our children. So it sounds like the discussion here is revolving around 1 or 2 sentences in this letter. Is that correct? And if the language could be reworked to the satisfaction of Ms. Spellman and Ms. Dahlkemper, would you approve?
There are 2 issues on the table. One is the language, as you pointed to. The second issue is this board overreaching and micromanaging. That's the second issue. The board president having direct communication with the employee is outside the scope of our role and responsibility. If this board, as a 5-member board, wishes to talk about what the next steps are, I think that that is something that is done collaboratively with the incoming interim CEO or with the 4-member transition team and it is employee to employee, it is leader to employee, it is the person in those positions or that position who would communicate it, not the board president. It opens up a door for abuse.
I'm wondering, something Ms. Williams said before, and I'm not advocating, I'm wondering. Before you had suggested that it was important to have a majority and a minority. I'm wondering, since you all seem to have discussed and have a feeling about what Dr. Stevenson is or is not, you know, her departure, I wonder if we need to do something like that where we have two letters that are going out. Would that be clear?
Okay, so I'm going to end this discussion because we're not accomplishing a goal. We will review General GP 05 at the next meeting. We have to review general policies anyway. And at that point, we'll have a vigorous debate around exactly what are the boundaries with some proposed language. In the meantime, I will table this letter because that will come up next week, and I'm happy to do that because we have some disagreement on what the boundaries are, and it is the role of the board to determine what the boundaries are. So we will do that.